And all one's worrying about is how they're being presented here, and if we can rely on it. So we're talking about a very curious being, Agabus. We all back to that, you see? And you all have to agree that that's an odd name. And the whole thing is odd. And we have Ananias as a prophet. And later on, Agabus is going to appear a second time. Who remembers, or having read ahead, knows when he's going to appear a second time?
Ananias?
In Acts when? Acts 21. What's happening in Acts 21 when Agabus appears a second time? Don't run and read it. Try to see if you can remember orally. I can tell you, so you don't remember. Anyone know? Just, hey, I'm the Christian here in the class, then I know the thing better than any Christian here. And as far as that goes, okay. In the room I'm talking about. So we want to get on one of those spin the wheels for questions or something like that. And if you want to see, if you want to illustrate your faith by how many questions you can answer on that spin the thing, what's those quiz programs? What's it called? Wheel of Fortune. We could pick Christianity as subject. I bet I could win a lot of those contests, you know. Anyway, Acts 21. Agabus appears, and he's now, you will remember, he grabs Paul's girdle and ties it in a knot. And he says, this is what the Jews, it's always pretty anti-Semitic stuff, this is what the Jews are going to do to you in Jerusalem if you go up. And Paul rejects him and says, no, I'm going to go up. So his advice in Acts 21, and again, he doesn't come down to Antioch. What does he do? He comes down to Caesarea. So it's another coming down to. Why do people in this period always say coming down to? Because Jerusalem's on a high plateau, or a spur. I don't think it's a plateau, it's like a ridge. It's about 2,100 feet high, and in that part of the region where things are pretty flat, that's quite high. And so it's on a high spine, so it dominates. It's a strategic location because it has water there. That's what makes it, that's the reason for Jerusalem. It's a defensible position, it's strategic, there's water, and it's high, and it's difficult, it's easily defensible and very difficult to assault. It's a fortified high point along a ridge with water. And that's all you need for a good fortress. So anyone who goes down from Jerusalem, you go down to the coast, you go down to Syria, you go down, and in Hebrew, it's always going up and going down. That's the verbs that they use to talk about. How many have gone up to Jerusalem in this class? On a road? Any of you? Well, you actually do drive up this defile. Now it's lined with vehicles that were destroyed in the 1948 Arab-Israeli war, as mementos of that time, because they had to break through the road under heavy fire and stuff, and so they left the burned out hulks of the trucks that were supplying the city as monuments of the destruction. Now it's a 4-lane superhighway that whizzes past those things. Then it was just a dirt track. So anyway,
by way of contrast, in England we also say going up to London. It's not
yeah, that's weird. That is weird, going up to London. Yeah, that's sort of like going up to the big city, I guess. Yeah. Actually, because most of the time in England, map-wise, you're going down to London, aren't you?
Exactly.
Unless you're in the South counties and you're, sort of down by Winchester or Southampton, and you're going up to London, which I can understand. But if I was in Newcastle, I don't think they say going up to London from Newcastle.
My relatives in the North Sea are going up to London.
Do they really? You're not kidding, because my wife's from the north too, and I've never heard her use that expression. I'll have to ask her about that. We'll argue it out the next time, okay? Anyway, okay. So Agabus is something we want to certainly keep in mind and worry about. So he produces the prophecy of the spirit of the famine. And then we get all the material in chapter 12, where Mary, the mother of John Mark, is introduced. Peter flees. James and the brothers are introduced. No telling who they are. And would you all agree with this? Acts. okay, noun, verb, as if we already know who he is. Because when he said, and Peter went to Mary, the mother of John Mark's house, to leave a message for James and the brothers, doesn't that really assume that you're supposed to know who James is, that he should have been introduced? Does anyone feel that that's an illegitimate conclusion to draw from that sentence? Now, I know no teacher probably ever brings that to anyone's attention, but to my mind, that, so we talk about sources here in college courses. What's the source of a given document? Is it built on sources? The two-source hypothesis, the three-source hypothesis, you know, the Q source in the Gospels and so on. What's the source of Acts? What are the documents that went into the writer's final version of these things? So, you know, I would think in the original source there was an introduction of James. Because this looks like we should know who he is. And does this ever tell us who James is? Never. You know, how do we know who James is? How do we have to find out? Forget the early church fathers. How do we have to find out who he is? Have to go to Paul in Galatians. If we didn't have Paul in Galatians, we wouldn't have a clue. We wouldn't have a clue who he is. Well, you could maybe in the gospel see his mother and his brothers came to him and list the brothers, okay, but this doesn't make it clear that this is one of the brothers of Jesus here, does it? You don't see that anywhere mentioned, do you? There's not one word about that. I think that says something. It says the writers were not happy about that, and for the various reasons, either kept it back, discarded it, deleted it, and therefore you have to have an ideological reason for that, don't you? That's what I'm trying to get at, and I think hopefully you're beginning to see why I've been trying to emphasize these things, and it's not anti-Christian to emphasize these things. I think it's pro-Christian, trying to dig out the people in the real history if they haven't been treated properly. If there's no problem, okay, but now all of you will admit that not to tell us who the leader is who seems to have been over Peter, and not to tell us that he was James's brother is a big defect of any narrative. I mean, really, what narrative wouldn't tell us that Bobby Kennedy was Jeff Kennedy's brother? I mean, that's something that really, then you have to think that people have an ideological reason for it, and I think that we see that, yeah.
Supposing that the writers didn't leave it out, do you think there was an opportunity for someone else to take it out?
You know, my theory is that they substituted the Judas selection for it.